And every time Hosea stood to lead the people of God or to speak to the people of God, as he begged them to return to the Lord, as he accused them of being unfaithful to God, there was not one person there who doubted whether or not Hosea knew what he was talking about. Because they knew his wife. They knew her children. Hosea used his own personal tragedy to understand the tragedy that was going on in Israel. He loved his wife as God loved his people. It's so often true that God uses our experiences to help us understand what others are going through. Again, back to verse 2. When the Lord began to speak to Hosea, the Lord said to him, "Go, take to yourself an adulterous wife and children of unfaithfulness, because the land is guilty of the vilest adultery in departing from the Lord." I think if God were going to call one of us today, he might very well use the model of Hosea. And if God were calling someone from us to lead this country, do you think he would call a man to choose a young girl who had been faithful, still a virgin? Or would God say to this man, "I want you to marry a woman who has lived as a prostitute, because my nation, America, has been unfaithful"? You know, we as Christians have trouble relating to Christians who are unfaithful to God. Sometimes we get frustrated, we get aggravated with these people. And yet God has asked us to be spiritual leaders. And men, specifically, God has asked you to be spiritual leaders to your wives. And it doesn't matter how your wives live, how your wives respond, how your wives react. Being a spiritual leader for your wife has nothing to do with her, nothing to do with her behavior. It's about you. God loved Israel. Israel had been unfaithful to God for years, but God still loved them. That's who God is. And one of the messages for husbands and fathers today is that you are to love your wife, you are to love your children, no matter what. And God forbid, but if you do not have the ability to love your wife and your children from your heart emotionally, you must love them with your behavior. Now, what does that mean? It means, on the one hand, that you will do everything that is right and good for them. And on the other hand, it means that they will never know the difference. Do you understand what I'm saying to you as a Christian? Sometimes we say, well, I'm going to do the right thing, but I'm going to let them know. Here, take a glass of water. But no, to love them as God loves us, they would never know the difference. We bring blessing to their hearts. Hosea's second problem was his children. Hosea was a man who was in touch with the Word. God spoke to him. But unfortunately, he was married to a woman who was in touch with every man who would spend the night with her. And don't you know that he had trouble focusing on serving God, doing what God wanted him to do? The command, God's original command, was go. Take to yourself an adulterous wife and children of unfaithfulness. Gomer's children were children of a prostitute. No one knew who their fathers were. In verse 3, so Hosea married Gomer, daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. Then the Lord said to Hosea, call him Jezreel. Verse 6, Gomer conceived again and gave birth to a daughter. Then the Lord said to Hosea, call her Lo-ruhamah. Verse 8, Gomer had another son. Then the Lord said, call him Lo-ami. Jezreel. It's not exactly the name that you would give to your child. It's a name that when you hear it, the people in Hosea's day would have associated it with defeat and bloodshed. Here's the place where Jezebel had Naboth killed to steal his vineyards. The word reeked of bloodshed. The name means God will sow. You see, there was hope. And as fathers and husbands, we have hope in today's world. We believe that no matter what is going on, God will sow seeds of righteousness. And our children may not follow us step by step, but there is hope that if we sow the seed like the characters in Hansel and Gretel, those children, our children, will follow those steps in the future. And you and your wife may not always be on the same page, but there is hope that if you sow the seeds of kindness and love, that there will come the time where your wife will follow those steps. And of course, a good example of that is the story of the prodigal son in Luke 15, where the loving father patiently, lovingly waited for the harvest. And I think we as Christians need to look at our country and we need to believe that there will be a harvest. I don't care how difficult the economy gets. I don't care who sits in the Oval Office. I believe that there is hope, and until the day I die, my job is to sow seeds of revival. And God would have you to do the same thing, believing that He is going to bless and lead our nation. The second child born to Hosea and Gomer was Lo-ruhamah. The name means not pitied. And no doubt Hosea looked at this young girl and he felt so sorry for her. More than likely she would grow up to be just like her mother. But he said, you know, I am not going to feel sorry for her, because if I feel sorry for her, that means I have given up. I have given in to the belief that she is going to fail. So her name is not pitied. I believe that God will give her the victory. Now, guys, every child develops certain tendencies in life. If you watch your child, did you watch the children as they were singing? I could almost stand on the platform at the places where the children were standing. And as the directors were saying to them, you know, do the motions, some of the children just were really carried away. They were going wild. And some of the children were more reserved, and they were doing like this. If you watch your child, you know that that child has certain tendencies. Some of those are good, some are not good. As a parent, specifically as a father, part of your responsibility is to spend enough time with your child so that you recognize the tendencies. and that you are able to look at the bad tendencies and deal with them before they become habits. I am amazed at the number of people who come to me with their children and their bad habits. And we have enough counselors in this church to tell you that that's pretty late.